Hi, I'm Lucy, and this is Girl&Gallery. Today, we're at Christie's auction house touring the Macabre exhibit. And if some of the works could get a little bit creepy, so come with me if you dare. Let's go. So macabre is a word that describes the unsettling, the uncomfortable, kind of grim aspects of life. And it makes sense because a lot of the works in this exhibit will cause you to be confronted with those feelings. A lot of the paintings, especially the older paintings, they have a good meaning to them. So we're gonna look at all the creepy stuff. It's gonna be cool, but we'll leave it light at the end. So I want you to come with me over here. This is the first painting that we're gonna look at. And this is by Benjamin Spires. Now Ben Spires, he's still alive. He's a living artist. And that's another thing that's so cool about this exhibit is that there's very, very old paintings right next to very contemporary new paintings. Ben Spires is one of the people that helped to curate and to write about the exhibit. The work here that we're looking at is called Pinkie. And I mean, you can see that right here she has her pinky up. The macabre in this painting, I believe, is in the contrast between her position and her bone structure and the calmness in her face. If you look at her face right here, it's very soft and she's very relaxed. She's comfortable. But if anybody has bone structure like this, when your ribs look like a playground jungle gym, it's not comfortable. That's what the confrontation is that she sat there like this and she feels okay, she feels calm, she looks very confident, but there's something unsettling in her belly. And I guess the composition of this image kind of made me think that maybe she was a dancer, and because you're kind of looking up at her, she might be on stage and you might be sitting front row at the show. Now come with me through here to this room. This is one of the first rooms in the exhibit, and it features one Andy Warhol image. Now, it might surprise you knowing that Andy Warhol is the guy that had the pop art, everything was colorful, it was Marilyn Monroe, it was soup cans, you know what I mean. In the 60s, he started a series that was a little bit more grim, a little bit more macabre, and it was called Death and Disasters. And a lot of what he painted was these more gruesome images of life, like car crashes, and this is the most famous image that he did of an electric chair. Now, it is a darker work, it is harder to look at, and it is even more creepy by up in the corner there's a little sign that says silence. And it creates this very unsettling feeling of potentially the last moments of someone being with us here on Earth. And the rest of the series depicted people, and this is the only one that is without people. It kind of leaves that emptiness feeling of there not being anything there when someone is gone. If I can just lead you around here, there is a quote to make it a little bit more positive. And it says, "The idea is not to live forever, it is to create something that will." I guess you could say that with this work and with a lot of Andy Warhol's work, he did that. He did make work that lasted so long. He sadly isn't with us anymore, but his work is, and we do still read it. Another little detail that's very cool about this exhibit is that they have these little squigglies pinpointed around the show in different places. What that signals to is if you come over here by the note cards, there's an inscription by Benjamin Spires. It's his more conversational depiction, and you can kind of get to know one of the minds behind the show. Let's go this way into this room. So this big red room is adorned with this massive piece right here by artist Paula Rigo. The most impactful thing about this piece is that she drew all of this by hand. This is paper and charcoal, which is just wild because it is such a massive piece. I mean, I'm about 182 centimeters and look how big that is. I think it's great that they have this piece in right now because it is to honor the artist that she was. And a lot of her works that she would do were named after books. Let's go this way to the other side of the room, to this piece right here by Max Ernst. Now, what I really like about this painting is that it is a painting, this is oil on canvas, is that it reminded me of when you're a little kid and you imagine all the monsters under your bed. This is kind of what I used to think of. I used to think of something that wasn't too scary, but it was just creepy enough that you wouldn't want it to bite your toes. A really interesting thing that Max used to do with his works is that he would paint something and then scrape off the excess. So if you come in close right here, and you can see all these little bits of texture. Sometimes he would do etching. So you know when you were a kid and in school, you'd have a leaf and put a piece of paper over it and rub a crayon over it and you'd get the impression of the whole thing. That's kind of what he's done here, but with oil paint on a canvas. And it's great to see these teeny tiny little details. And one of the curators of the exhibit actually told me that if you get a UV light, really strong light, and you shine it on the canvas, it comes up very patchy where the paint was very thick and where it was thin from when he would scrape it off. Now these rooms in the middle of the exhibit are some of my favorites. Along the walls here you have works, lesser known works by a lot of really famous artists like Klimt. There's two by Dali here, and if you wrap around, there's some works here on the wall by a well-known German artist. He was a modern realist. His name is Otto Dix. He was one of the, I guess, founding members of a movement called New Objectivity. And that movement really spearheaded a way of taking the old and the new and combining them into one to make a new style of painting. It was really popular in Berlin at the time. And I think that that blending of old and new is really important in this exhibit because, like I said, you have the contemporary and the old masters. And speaking of old masters, this painting right here is by an artist, Hieronymus Bosch, one of my personal favorites. It's quite old, and you might know him from his painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights, this massive painting that is rumored to be kind of the underworld, Earth, and the Garden of Eden. It's very interesting. But anyways, this painting is called The Temptation of St. Anthony, and it's a biblical story about St. Anthony was trapped in the desert and was being tempted by all of these not nice things. But in the painting, you can see all the yucky bad stuff going on around him, and it's insane detail. The moral of the story is that by being strong with his faith, and I guess the light in life, the good in life, through prayer he was able to stay away from all the bad things and stay true to himself and stay true to what he believed in. And whether that is your religion or not, I think that's a very important meaning to know what is true and good in your heart. As long as you stay faithful to that, you'll be all right. It's crazy that a painting that is so old, this is over 500 years old, has a meaning that still to this day reigns so true and is still so important. And that's what's so special about old masters' works. I promise you, they're not as boring as they look if you just look at all the teeny tiny details. Now on our way to the rest of the galleries, we're gonna stop here and look at this sculpture. This is a limestone sculpture from 1566. So this thing is older than the United States of America as a country. So have that be your frame of mind for just how old this is. And look at how crazy it is that there's all these little details that are still there. The part that I really want to point out to you is down here in the inscription, it says memento mori. And this is a really prominent saying in Stoicism now, some of you may know it from, but it's also a big thing in art history. Memento mori translates roughly to a reminder of death, or the memory of death. And sometimes it could be in a slightly more creepy version, or you could look at it in a more uplifting way. We only have so much time on this earth, right? And you might as well live it to the fullest. You might as well take advantage of all the great opportunities that we have being human beings on earth. In 1566, maybe a slightly darker meaning, but we can take it into a way in our lives today that is useful to us. And this is the power of art. You get what you take from it. So if you come check this out, I would have a look at that inscription because it is crazy how much detail there still is there from that many hundreds of years. Coming into this room here, we actually passed by this painting, which is by Stanley Donwood, who is one of the musicians in Radiohead, which is quite cool. Around this corner, we have two paintings here. This painting is by Max Ernst, which is the same artist that did the painting in the red room that kind of looked like the creepy monsters under your bed. And this painting was inspired by a bird, his bird, and you can see a little bird head right there, which also ties into this painting here, which I think does a really good job of exemplifying the idea in the curation of this exhibit that has the old and the new, but in one compact piece. Up here, you see this kind of beak shape, which is in reference to a mask that people actually used to wear during the plague. But when you look down here at these three stripes, it kind of looks like he's wearing Adidas tracksuit bottoms. So very contemporary, very not. Keeping on theme with the macabre, the grim, the creepy, is this painting over here that was painted in the 1600s. and it's called The Nightmare, and it depicts a sleeping man and all the horrible things that he's dreaming about that he obviously doesn't want to happen swirling around him. And you can see all the little crackles in the paint because it's so old. You have the old and the new right next to each other. These two pieces right here were painted quite recently. This painting I find really cool. It's called Roadkill, and it's of this sadly little disheveled kitty. And you can see in its eye is a license plate, which means, or is alluding to the fact that this cat's probably gonna meet their fate, their 9th life, any minute now. Let's move on over here, past the hairy turkey, to this massive piece right here. It has a really cool name. It's called Patchouli Magoo. And I think that the expression in it does such a good job at kind of describing almost how some of us feel walking through here, seeing these creepier images. We just want to scream in horror. So it does a really good job of setting the room. And having this be our last painting that we're looking at. That does it for our tour today, guys. Thanks for watching. I'd like to thank Christie's for welcoming us in today. And if you have any questions, please drop them down below. And remember to subscribe for more Girl&Gallery.